Very single day, the world produces more than 100,000 metric tons of glass. The United States alone consumes over 12 million metric tons per year. Every skyscraper window, every smartphone screen, every car windshield, all of it starts from the same raw material: fine white powder pulled from the ground. The process that turns sand into glass runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, at temperatures higher than volcanic lava. Let's follow 5,000 metric tons of silica sand through a week-long industrial sequence that ends as a perfectly flat 81-centimeter glass sheet. The process starts underground, not in a factory. At silica mining operations, including large deposits in Brazil, where veins run several hundred meters below the surface. Drill teams bore holes 11 meters deep into hard rock. Each hole receives a 60-kilogram charge of ammonium nitrate mixed with fuel oil, then primed with 2.5 kilograms of a high-sensitivity detonating compound. The blast fractures the rock face in seconds. Excavators move in immediately after the dust settles, loading thousands of metric tons of raw silica ore onto haul trucks within hours of each detonation. The raw ore arriving at the processing plant is not yet usable. It carries clay particles, organic material, and fine dust that would introduce defects into any finished glass product. The first stage is wet washing. The ore is fed into large agitation tanks filled with heated water, where mechanical paddles keep the mixture in constant motion. The elevated water temperature, maintained between 60 degrees Celsius and 80 degrees Celsius, 140 degrees Celsius and 176 degrees Celsius, loosens clay bonds that cold water cannot break. The wash cycle runs for several hours per batch, and the overflow water carries the unwanted fines away through a series of settling ponds. After washing, the sand moves into industrial rotary dryers. These are large cylindrical drums, typically 15 to 25 meters long, rotating continuously, while hot air at around 300 torch, 572 degrees, flows through the interior. The drying cycle reduces moisture content to below 0.5% by weight, a specification that matters because residual moisture entering a 1,650 diameter furnace converts instantly to steam, creating pressure pockets that produce bubbles in the final glass. Once dried, the purified silica is loaded into 1 metric ton bags and transported directly to the glass factory. The facility receiving this material is the largest flat glass plant in the United States. Every week, more than 5,000 metric tons of silica sand arrive at its gates. The site operates continuously. No scheduled shutdowns, no weekend pauses, because the furnaces inside cannot be allowed to cool without risking structural damage to the refractory lining. Inside the factory, the silica does not go directly into a furnace. It is first combined with 2 additional compounds that change its behavior entirely. Sodium carbonate, soda ash, lowers the melting point of pure silica from approximately 1,710 degrees down to around 1,000 degrees, reducing the energy required to achieve a workable melt. Calcium carbonate is added to improve chemical durability. Without it, the sodium in the glass would leach out slowly in contact with water, degrading the material over months. The ratio of these 3 components is tightly controlled. The standard soda-lime glass formula runs at roughly 73% silica, 14% sodium carbonate, and 9% calcium carbonate by weight, with the remaining 4% occupied by secondary oxides. A deviation of more than 1.5% in the sodium carbonate fraction shifts the viscosity curve of the melt. The glass flows differently at forming temperature, and the resulting sheet thickness becomes inconsistent. Colorants are added at this stage as well. Cobalt oxide, introduced at concentrations as low as 0.02% by weight, produces the characteristic deep blue used in architectural and decorative glass. The entire batch is blended in a double-chamber mixer that folds the dry materials from one end to the other, ensuring homogeneity before any heat is applied. One additional ingredient enters the mixer: cullet. This is recycled broken glass from previous production runs, reintroduced at rates between 20 and 30% of total batch weight. Cullet melts at a lower temperature than virgin raw materials, reducing furnace energy consumption by approximately 3% for every 10% of cullet added. A factory running at 30% cullet content saves enough energy annually to power several thousand average households. The blended batch enters a gas-fired furnace where temperature reaches 1,750 gradi, roughly 200 grads hotter than the surface temperature of a typical basaltic lava flow. At this temperature, the solid granular mixture undergoes a sequence of overlapping reactions. Between 800 degrees Celsius and 900 degrees Celsius, the sodium carbonate decomposes, releasing carbon dioxide and forming sodium oxide. Between 1000 degrees Celsius and 1200 degrees Celsius, the calcium carbonate follows the same path. By 1400 works, the silica grains have dissolved into the ionic melt, and the material is a single homogeneous liquid. The factory's furnace system uses 12 separate crucibles, each capable of holding up to 270 kilograms of molten glass. Operators in fire-resistant suits and Kevlar gloves introduce the batch into the crucibles manually, using long-handled metal rakes to push material toward the hot zone and to skim the surface of the melt. The skimming step removes air bubbles that form as the decomposition gases escape. A bubble 2 millimeters in diameter, trapped in a finished glass sheet, reduces local tensile strength by up to 40%, which is why the melt is held at peak temperature for at least 24 hours before any forming begins. During this refining hold, residual gases continue migrating to the surface, and the viscosity drops to a level where the glass flows like heavy syrup. The 12 crucibles can hold different glass colors simultaneously, enabling the factory to produce multiple product lines in parallel. Each crucible runs its own color formula independently, with no cross-contamination between batches. The moment molten glass leaves a crucible is one of the most time-sensitive operations in industrial manufacturing. Workers have a window of roughly 20 to 30 seconds to transfer the glowing mass from the crucible to the forming table before it cools past the workable viscosity range. At 1200 grads, the glass flows freely. At 700 grads, it has already stiffened too much to form without defects. The difference between a usable and a wasted batch is a temperature drop of 500 grads, and it happens in under a minute if the material is left stationary. The ladles used in this transfer range in capacity from 2 to 18 kilograms of molten glass. For complex color blends, operators draw from up to 5 different crucibles simultaneously, layering streams of different colored glass onto the mixing table in a sequence that has been refined over decades of production. The technique of mixing molten glass colors using a steel fork on a flat table descends directly from methods documented in Venetian glass-making records from the late 10th century. Over 1,000 years of the same fundamental hand motion, now performed inside a factory, processing 700 metric tons of material per day. The mixing table is where the industrial and the artisanal converge most visibly. An operator collects the incandescent mass, glowing orange at around 100 grads, and works it with a steel fork in controlled, deliberate strokes. The goal is to distribute colorant uniformly without overmixing. Overmixing introduces too much air and produces a matte, opaque appearance. Undermixing leaves color streaks. The acceptable range is narrow. Experienced operators typically complete the mixing sequence in 8 to 12 strokes, a figure developed empirically over years of production runs. Once the color distribution is correct, the mixed glass is deposited onto a roller press machine. 2 hardened steel rollers apply controlled downward pressure, flattening the viscous mass as it passes between them. The rollers are set to a gap corresponding to the target sheet thickness, typically between 3 and 6 millimeters, for standard flat glass production. As the glass exits the rollers, it has already dropped below 900 grasp ratio and is no longer fluid, but it is still far too brittle for handling. Internal stresses from the rapid forming process are locked into the material at this stage. The sheet passes immediately into an annealing layer, a long tunnel furnace where temperature is held at approximately 560 degrees Celsius, 1040 Celsius, at entry, and drops to near room temperature over a controlled gradient spanning 30 to 90 minutes depending on glass thickness. The annealing process allows internal stress to relax without introducing new deformation. Glass that skips annealing or anneals too quickly carries residual tension that causes spontaneous fracture, sometimes hours or days after forming. Each of the factory's 12 crucibles produces approximately 25 finished sheets per 24-hour cycle, for a total of around 300 sheets per day across the full furnace bank. The Pilkington float process, invented in 1959, not 1999, as earlier accounts sometimes incorrectly state, industrialized flat glass production at a completely different scale by floating molten glass over a bath of liquid tin. The tin bath method produces sheets with optical flatness measured in fractions of a millimeter per meter. The factory described here uses crucible and roller forming for specialty and colored glass, while float lines handle high-volume architectural glass production separately. The annealing layer's temperature profile is not arbitrary. Glass has a specific annealing point, the temperature at which internal stress relaxes within approximately 15 minutes, and a strain point, roughly 15 degrees 6 to 20 degrees 6 below that, where molecular movement effectively stops. For standard soda-lime glass, the annealing point sits at about 588 degrees, and the strain point at around 511 degrees C. The cooling rate through this 37-degree window must not exceed 5 degrees per minute. Above that rate, the outer surface of the sheet cools faster than the interior, freezing a permanent stress gradient into the glass. The result is a sheet that may pass visual inspection, but fractures unpredictably under load. Below the strain point, the glass can be cooled as quickly as the equipment allows. Faster cooling below 511 degrees does not reintroduce stress because the molecular structure is already immobilized. This is why the back half of an annealing layer can use forced air cooling, while the front half must use precisely metered radiant heating. Temperature sensors are placed every 2 to 3 meters along the layer ceiling, feeding data to a control system that adjusts gas flow in real time. A sensor drift of 10 degrees Celsius in the wrong zone can produce an entire production run of visually perfect but structurally compromised glass. Sheets that only fail weeks later in the field. The practice of controlled glass cooling was understood empirically by Roman glassmakers as early as the 1st century AD, who discovered that glass objects removed too quickly from furnaces cracked spontaneously. The mathematical framework explaining why, based on thermal expansion coefficients and elastic modulus, was not formalized until the early 20th century. Zoom out from a single crucible producing 270 kilograms of glass per batch, and the scale of the global glass industry becomes difficult to hold in a single mental image. The world produces more than 36.5 million metric tons of flat glass per year, roughly 100,000 metric tons every single day. Stacked as standard 6mm sheets, the daily global output would form a column over 2,700 kilometers tall. The United States alone operates more than 50 float glass lines, each running continuously for 10 to 15 years between cold repairs. Because shutting down and restarting a float furnace costs between $15 and $25 million in refractory replacement and energy. The economic value embedded in global glass production exceeds $140 billion annually, and the construction sector alone accounts for roughly 65% of that demand. A single modern glass skyscraper facade can contain between 10,000 and 40,000 individual glass panels, each requiring its own cutting, edge finishing, coating, and quality verification sequence before installation. The largest architectural glass panels currently produced measure up to 3 meters by 15 meters and weigh over 700 kilograms, 1,540 watt-bands per panel. The raw material driving all of this, silica sand, costs between $30 and $60 per metric ton at the mine gate. By the time it exits a glass factory as finished flat glass, its value has increased by a factor of 20 to 100, depending on the product specification. A metric ton of standard float glass sells for approximately $600 to $800. A metric ton of low-iron, ultra-clear architectural glass sells for over $3,000. The difference is almost entirely in process control. Once the annealed sheets exit the leer and reach room temperature, they enter the cutting room. Workers here wear cut-resistant gloves, rated to EN 300A8 Level F, the highest protection class, because the freshly cut edges of glass sheet are sharp enough to cut through standard work gloves in a single contact. The cutting tool uses a tungsten carbide wheel tip, harder than the glass surface, which scores a controlled fracture line, rather than sawing through the material. A single straight score followed by controlled bending pressure separates the sheet cleanly. The standard output format from this factory is 81 centimeters by 81 centimeter plates, a dimension chosen to minimize waste across the most common downstream product sizes. Each plate undergoes visual inspection under raking light, which makes subsurface bubbles, inclusions, and stress lines visible to trained inspectors. Plates with bubbles larger than 0.5 millimeters in diameter, visible scratches deeper than 0.1 millimeters, or edge chips wider than 3 millimeters are rejected from the primary grade. Rejected material is not discarded. It is broken down and returned to the cullet stream, re-entering the furnace in the next batch cycle. The rejection rate for a well-controlled crucible run runs between 4 and 8% of total plates produced. Float line production, with its higher automation, achieves rejection rates below 2%. Approved plates are stacked in wooden crates with interleaved craft paper separators to prevent surface contact. Each crate holds between 40 and 80 plates, depending on thickness, with a maximum crate weight of 1,200 kilograms, 2,245 lbs for standard truck transport. The factory ships to customers across North America, Europe, and Asia. Transit time from factory to end customer ranges from 2 days for domestic freight to 6 weeks for ocean container shipments to Asia-Pacific markets. From an 11-meter blast hole in a Brazilian rock face to a finished 81-centimeter glass plate. The process spans roughly 1 week, consumes over 1,150 degrees of sustained heat, and requires a 37-degree temperature window to be crossed at no faster than 5 degrees per minute. The factory processes 700 metric tons of material every single day without stopping. Between 4 and 8% of every production run returns to the furnace as cullet, not as waste, but as a raw material that saves 3% of energy for every 10% reintroduced. The first humans to produce glass did so accidentally around 3000 BC. The chemistry has not changed since. What other industrial process running on ancient chemistry at modern scale would you like to see broken down? Drop it in the comments below, and subscribe to the channel with notifications on so you do not miss the next one.